Empire.
Hello and welcome to the live stream edition of the John Conn Report. You see Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders, here with me. Going to be here for at least 30 minutes and answer questions, talk about the playoffs, talk about Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz. And don't forget, you can check out Between the Hashes, our college football preview every week. Check out All's Caps, ALZ Caps, with former Washington Capitals defenseman Carl Alsner and AP hockey writer Steve Wino. But you're here to talk about the Commanders 7-5, Bram.
Yeah.
And playoffs. They're right now they're in. There's a long way to go, but right now they're in.
Well, right now they're in. I mean, here's the better one. I did this, I gotta talk for 3 hours a day. Here's the better one. Let me go through like what is realistic at this point for NFC teams. Like going into the season, the reason why I liked Washington to make the playoffs just in general was, I didn't feel like that the NFC was particularly strong. And there were going to be a lot of teams, and some of this is upside down, but I didn't expect much from Chicago. I really didn't expect Detroit to be a playoff team. I didn't expect the Giants, I'll get to them in a minute, really to be doing what they're doing. I didn't expect Carolina, Atlanta. I mean, there were just so many candidates. Seattle, and they're another interesting one. Like, I didn't expect really any of them to really be, realistically competitive for playoff spots. And so I just thought the road was very thin, to get through. Now, like the fact that the Rams, Cardinals, Packers, and Buccaneers to a lesser degree, but still the Buccaneers are so upside down. It's going to be hard for them to frankly not make the playoffs. And if you look at the road right now, honestly, it's like Washington, Seattle, New York, and either Atlanta or Tampa are going to end up in like 2 or 3 spots. And so because these other teams have already rendered themselves basically out of this, and I'm shocked, at like Arizona, the Rams, and Tampa and Green Bay and teams like that, because that's happened, like honestly, I think the baseline is 2 more wins. And I think if they get 3, they're in. And if they get 2, it's probably enough. I mean, it's really remarkable.
Well, and here, before we came on, and first of all, I apologize for my audio on this end. Having some issues with the cords, the mics, whatever. So I apologize for how it sounds. I know everybody always talks about it, so we're working on it. But anyways, tonight there was a little bit of an issue. Anyway, Bram, so I was going over before we got on here. Yeah, by the way, somebody asked, no big hats. No, I don't have a hat. I can't even fake a hat like that, like Brian Robinson had. Anyway, so looking at the playoffs, 9 is going to be, to me, you're going to be in a tiebreaker most likely. 10, I think you're in. It says here's Seattle's schedule. Right now, let's say the way San Francisco is playing, and I think in their schedule, they're going to make it. Let's give them the division. One of those teams win the division. Right now, Seattle's in second there. So it's really Seattle, New York, and Washington for 2 spots. So Seattle's schedule.
Unless both Atlanta and Tampa both somehow get hot at the same time, but they are playing each other at the end of the season. So that's the one caveat. But, we're talking about a bunch of teams in general here that don't look like they have the propensity to go on 6-game win streaks.
Right. And Atlanta's essentially 2 games behind Washington. So right now I'm leaving them out of the discussion and looking at the teams.
They'd have to get hot, win the division, and then Tampa would have to be alive and near Washington.
Right. So Seattle has at the Rams, home to Carolina, 49ers, at KC, Jets, and then hosting the Rams. That, unless they collapse, it's kind of easy to see them getting to certainly 8 wins and possibly 9. Because
it's crazy you say that. Just think about that. That like 4 of the final 6 are the Rams, the 49ers, and the Chiefs. And you're sitting there going, I have a hard time seeing them not win a certain amount.
And the hard game might be the Jets. So
yeah, it's crazy.
So it is crazy, but
Seattle's also gotten really cold. They just gave up 40 points at home.
Correct.
So like not unlike what I think we'll probably talk about the Giants a little bit here, and probably what they're saying about us, there is a regression to the mean that I think can be expected here. These are not teams that are built to be big, hot 12, 13 win teams.
Correct. So you look at that, The one then, okay, let's say they get to 9 wins. A tiebreaker is the conference record if it's for the wild card and you're not in the same. So Seattle right now is 4-4 in the conference. Washington also 4-4 in the conference. So right there, it's going to be a tight one there. Then the Giants have, let's see what they have.
The Giants have like what Washington had last year.
Washington, Philly, at Washington, at Minnesota, Indiana, at Philly. Yeah. Now
they have a really tough end of season.
The hard part for them is if, let's say, Washington and the Giants are tied. Let's say they split, and then Washington and the Giants are tied. It could very well come down to that last game of the year when they play Philly and Washington plays Dallas. And if Dallas and Philly are already set and they don't need it, and they both teams win, well, Washington gets a tiebreaker because they'd have a better divisional mark.
Yeah, so well, I mean,
assuming it plays out the way we think.
There's so much to play out, but like, honestly, for our purposes, we need Dallas to be close to Philly at the end of the year, and therefore those games matter, I think, for them.
Well, I think you'd rather
because you can't have Philadelphia if they got the 1 seed, they're going to rest everybody.
Well, if Dallas and Philly are both, let's say Philly's got the division, Dallas is entrenched as the first wild card. It doesn't mean anything to either of them. I kind of think that's what you'd rather have, because then if the Giants and Washington both win, then Washington gets it because they'd have the better divisional mark. So there's a long way to go, and we're getting a little bit far.
3-2 down the stretch. I think Washington's going to get in 3-2, and they've got 3 of 5 at home. So really they're going to be out of excuses. So they've got to get it. It's not easy, obviously, because the 2 Giants games certainly look different than they did when they were put on the schedule. But, listen, it's going to be hard, short of whatever happens this weekend, because we don't know. And I've complained openly about the crazy things that have happened to Washington schedule-wise. I think they've been really jobbed a number of times in recent years. But this one takes the cake. And if I were the Giants, I would be furious that they're playing Washington this week. Washington's going to have a bye week. They're going to play the Eagles, and then Washington is going to play the Giants again. Not only do they get a week off, they get a week off to not even prepare for a different team, and then have them come in here. Like, right. It's an utterly ridiculous break that they got in the schedule. And there's going to be, short of a bunch of injuries we don't know about this weekend, there's going to be no excuse for Washington not to win at least that second game.
Listen, and I had our ESPN reporter Jordan Raanan on the podcast, and that's going to air on Thursday morning, going over the Giants game and just what to expect from the Giants, and a scouting report on them. And I'll be honest, like, after talking to him, like, could you see a sweep? If one team sweeps, it's this team. That's how I look at it. Now, we always know that weird things happen when this team goes up to New York. That much we can count on. And it's like, it used to always be the Giants were struggling and Eli was on the verge of looking like horrible. And then Washington would show up and it's like everything was solved. So, it always felt like it would go that way. So you never know what happens up there, but they don't stop the run. They have trouble, as Jordan explained, they have trouble defending the edges. Their top corner right now, Bram, I think, is Fabian Moreau. So
he was out last week. I don't know if he's back.
He's supposed to come back this week. Adoree Jackson's out.
What's interesting here is, this screams of a week where because Washington saw this early and they're going to get it here. Wink Martindale brings a tremendous amount of pressure.
That's the key.
They bring a tremendous amount of pressure.
Correct.
So, can they handle this differently than they did earlier in the season? And there's a couple questions that I have about that. One, Taylor Heineke's not nearly moving around as much as he was in the past. I don't know if that's by design. I don't know if it's just that they're so run heavy that, like, there's no necessity to do it. But there's part of this that feels like, to me, he's going to be a sitting duck, like any quarterback would be a sitting duck if he just sits back there. And secondarily, because he's not moving around very much, the longest pass play they've had the last couple of weeks is 26 yards. Okay. Right. So they're not even attempting passes basically down the field. And secondarily, so, like, is that a big deal this weekend? I think maybe, right? Like, I think this offense is going to have to get a little more creative again than they've probably been, a little less. I know it seems like let's just run the ball 40 times a game and we'll be fine. I think we're going to need to be a little bit more reliant on a passing game. And I do have some open questions about how many games Heineke has played to this point, and just a general feel of how he looks, I don't know if the season's caught up to him a little bit. But
Right.
we need to get him through this weekend, hopefully with some plays down the field, because they should be there for this team. And then, somehow, I don't care what the score is again, just squeeze out a win one way or the other, head into a bye, and then they're sitting pretty at that point.
Yeah, if
They're
they
really
win this
sitting
game,
pretty.
they're in control. If they win this game, they're in control. And to your point, Bram, like my big key, and I'll get to my keys and predictions for on over the weekend. Clearly, I think a big key will be how well you do on early downs and negate the pressure by putting yourself in a good situation. And I think that's what they've done quite a bit. So I think that's going to be a big key. But you're right. Like I can talk about how the secondary looks, but it really is. I'm going to answer Jay Kurt's 20 question in a minute, but it really is about putting him in a good spot and avoiding the pressure by 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, and what can not getting those 1st and 10 sacks that put you in a bad spot. That's what they have to avoid. But if they do, then I think the chance to pass this week is definitely
This
there.
comment's a big deal to me too.
Yes, I wanted to get to this.
Needs more looks. Is it chemistry, change of quarterback? Offense needs to be better. If Ron is Taylor on a short lease, are they winning in spite of him? I don't like to say winning in spite of him. I don't believe in that. Like, I think
Right.
he doesn't make a tremendous amount of mistakes. He puts them in a good position. He makes a lot of good decisions, albeit he makes some, like every quarterback, he makes some bad ones. There was a really bad interception at the end of the first half. There could have been a late pass interception on the McLaurin play on the sideline that he was late on, and it was a nice play by Terrell, and they got lucky, that he didn't pick it off and it ended up hitting the ground. But like every time I hear somebody, freak out about his mistakes, I'm like, every quarterback makes mistakes. Like, you got to calm down. In general, in crunch time, he's making very good decisions. What I'm seeing is not him at the last few weeks, and I do wonder why. Like, what's going on there? And on Jahan Dotson, I think this is a really big deal. Like, this guy's been targeted like 4 times in the 3 games since he's come back. He's made 2 catches. They've made almost no effort to incorporate him in the offense. And I knew we would be doing this, that like every week we're going to be like, who's the guy that's not getting the ball, because somebody's not getting the ball. But I think they need to get him back going. This is my point about the downfield passing game a little bit. He's being underutilized, not even the word for it. He's been a month-long decoy. So I think it is time to dial him up a couple times to get him involved.
So here's a couple of things with Heineke. The leash, I think, will go. I think they'll give him, like, if they went up to New York and it doesn't go well and they lose and the offense doesn't look great, I think they're going to stick with him for one more game, give him another chance, right? Because that's how they've been, and I would say I feel pretty safe in saying that. So, and I think that's, but you never know. It depends. We have to see how it goes to get to that point, to see how long the leash is. But I think the leash is one bad game will not get him out of there. One really bad game plus a loss. I think there are plays that he makes every game, and the tight end to John Bates was an example, and the timing and the rhythm of the play.
Outstanding call, outstanding throw, outstanding everything.
Execution was very good. Yep. And there was a lot of things that they sold the fake well. There's so many things that go into it. Some of the checkdowns where you're giving guys a chance to run with the ball, the swing to Brian Robinson, give him a chance with some space, get ahead of steam and go. There was another one to Antonio Gibson. And again, I'm not diminishing the mistakes. We all see them. But when people say, why is he still playing? Those are some of the reasons. I don't make it up. You don't make it up. This is what they say. And, there are things that they like that he does. And now as far as Wentz goes, the question would be like, what you hear is, you can see that he's maybe a little bit more confident with some things because he had a chance to really step back and watch it and learn it more. And that, maybe it allowed his body to heal, that maybe he was dealing with some things that they didn't even realize that helps him as well if he goes back in. But it's still a risk. And I think they know that because they don't want to put a guy out there knowing that what Heineke's done. Now, the other part on Dotson, Bram, that has to be brought up, one, they're not throwing the ball a lot. So his chances are going down automatically. 2, like there was a play in the Houston game. He breaks wide open on the left side. And it was early in the game, and Heineke has him, and he doesn't throw it. And I don't know why, but he was there. So there are times where he's getting open where the trigger's not being pulled for whatever reason. And sometimes it might be that you can't see what Heineke's seeing. But the other part of it is, I think part of the reason is with the run game, they want De'Ami Brown in there blocking too. And De'Ami Brown has done a really good job there. That's cutting into Jahan's time as well. So, but I agree with you. Like, I thought last week might be a week where he would get a little bit more involvement.
So did
I certainly think this week I would want to get him involved too. The kid is good. This is not on him, and the kid is good. But I do think the style of play lends it to getting De'Ami Brown a little bit more in there and Cam Sims as well to block. And that takes some reps.
I don't want this to come off like I'm complaining, because I'm not complaining about wins. But I do think it is fair to ask for a little bit more. I thought like one of the most important things I heard after the Houston game was in the locker room. They clipped off John Allen's speech after the post game. He called out the offense and said, "You guys left all this stuff on the field. This was the biggest margin that they'd had the entire season. They won handily. It was never really even close. Defense was incredible in the first half." And he's like, "Hey, I'm not pointing you out individually, but you guys left too much on the field." And I have this, kind of sick feeling of they're leaving a little too much on the field, that there is more to get to, and that there is a higher level they can go. And the fact remains that, like, I love that they're winning all these games, but you got to be crazy to think that they're going to have, like, this is going to continue in perpetuity, that they're literally, a mistake losing all of these games. It's razor's edge every single week. And I love how competitive they are. And I love that they're winning. Like, I'm not complaining about any of that, but we all know that Deron Payne tips a ball up in the air that could easily land in Drake London's hands, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there like, what happened? Or like one corner falls down on one play and all of a sudden they're down. I think we need to start, asking a little bit more of, can they do this? Can they do that?
Right.
And, but there's a lot of positives here too. Like, that was Brian Robinson's best game by far. He looked great. This is the first time that they were not only just heavy run reliant, they were dominant run reliant, and they had the average to show for it, to go with it. He was outstanding. To my point about I feel like this team is kind of like a basketball team a little bit. If you don't put the ball in everybody's hands every once in a while, they get disengaged. And that's why I don't want this to happen. Honestly, like, I was happy they targeted Bates a few times. It felt like it was a reward system for all the hard work that he's doing with all the blocks and everything. He could have scored 2 touchdowns in that game. I felt like they targeted him purposefully. I'm asking them to target Jahan a little bit more purposefully, because if you get him going in any way, I don't want to take anything away from McLaurin or anything away from Samuel. And obviously, you're right. They're not like throwing as much as they used to. So not everybody's going to get the ball. But if they get them all engaged, all making plays, that's where this offense gets super dangerous, like super dangerous. Correct. And it's not super dangerous right now.
When we start looking at like quarterback decisions here, let's say they put Carson Wentz in, and the assumption is, the question would be, do they run to me, if you're going to do that, you keep the same commitment to the run game and let him operate under those parameters. Early in the year, the tendency was to throw the ball more because you got a big, strong arm guy. You got, McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, and then Logan Thomas is out there. So you have to make sure that what you're sticking to your commitment to the run game and putting him in a better spot to throw. When Wentz was out there the first time, he did not have this Brian Robinson. He did not have, Logan Thomas being what he is. I think the line is better. Trey Turner is far better.
He's been way better than what he was.
Way better than he was on the air.
Yeah.
So he'd be coming into a different situation, and then
he is, but this goes back to the middle of the season when Rivera was asked about, like, what's the difference between you and these other teams? And he says quarterback. Yes. The reason why Heineke's got more mobility, which was very important, still is very important. I'm not seeing as much of it, but is very important. But largely, he also has way more a grasp of this offense.
Correct.
Like,
that's huge.
So I don't know where you are. Like, I am not in any way, shape, or form advocating a change there. I'm just seeing the starting phase of a decision that will be looming if they can't figure out how to get more production out of a passing game that should be more productive. And this weekend, if they run the ball down the Giants' throat and they can run the ball 40 times and they can control the clock and, dominate them and win, I'll shut up about it. But I don't think that's what's going to happen here. Like, I think there's going to have to be some opportunity downfield passing game they're going to take advantage of. So they're in a prove it spot to me with that, because they have the players to do it. They're going to have the matchup on their side. Are they capable of doing it? And can Heineke look like Heineke doing it again?
Yeah, let's just know the Giants are not good against the run, so they can run the ball on them. They give up over 5 yards a carry. They're 23rd in rushing yards allowed, but there is a weak spot in the secondary. So I can definitely see them needing to test them back there. And I think, so I can see that as well. The question again that I go back to, even with Wentz, is even though I say this, like they feel like he's more confident in certain things, that how's that going to manifest itself in the field? And you're not putting him out there until you're absolutely sure that he's ready. Jay Kerr wants to know, do you think they'll put in Howell over Wentz if they ever bench Heineke? No, because Howell's not ready. It's not remotely a question for them. How's a guy like this infatuation with Howell? It's
I don't get it. And you know what? I'm not advocating changing him. I'm just saying, like, I see the writing on the wall here if things don't change for them.
Right.
And eventually, because every game is so close, give me a break. They're not going to win all of these like this. Like, it's been, they've been great. I don't want to take anything away from them. They've been really great. They're fighting their you-know-what's off, and I appreciate it. And they keep making these crazy plays down near the goal line in crunch time. It's amazing what they're doing. And I'm like, really, it's incredible. And I'm in for the ride. But I'm also here to go, all right, like now that your defense is doing this on a regular basis, can your offense play, just a little bit more of a quick strike offense when necessary and when it's afforded to you? Like, I'm not saying get away from what they're doing that's working. I still think they would be heavy run, heavy reliant. What I'm seeing here is there's a facet of their game that literally doesn't exist and hasn't for a few weeks. And I don't know if that's Heineke's just not being Heineke, if they're not targeting the right guys at certain times, is not taking advantage of the matchups, or if they're just fat and happy with running the ball and playing defense. But all I know is every single game comes down to a left hand up at the 3-yard line and getting a tip to go your way. And eventually that's going to go the wrong way. And you don't want it to happen in December when you need it the most, because they lost too many games early in the season. They haven't banked anything yet well enough to have the mistake game go awry for them. It can hurt them.
I like the left hand up reference. Mr. Ron B wants to know, other than finishing drive, where does Washington need to elevate their level during the stretch run? And I put this up there because it's exactly what we've been talking about. The pass game. You have to be more consistent and get more plays out of that just to get a few more quick strikes and more chunk plays. That's where you elevate it. Now, can they? We'll see. But that's where it's going to have to be. And then Sean Garner wants to know, come on, get it up here. There we go. Does Chase Young play this week? I don't know. I don't know. But I wanted to address it because they don't know right now. Wednesday's practice will be a big tell. He looked really good last Wednesday, but I still wonder. I'm still not sure if they're 100% sold that he's showing the confidence that he needs for them to then activate him. So I think it's still very questionable this week, but we'll know more Wednesday. We'll know more certainly by Friday afternoon. I think we'll probably know. They were very upbeat about him last week after Wednesday, and then it just kind of waned a little bit. So it's still very questionable.
The other one that really stood out to me from the other day that I think is a glaring void now, and I want to give them a lot of credit because they've gotten by without this person for weeks, and I can't believe it happened because they were so thin at the position, but they really missed Cole Holcomb the other day, like really badly. It was like one of the first times that, they went up. I got to tell you, Atlanta's offensive line is real. Like that was very good.
I love their run game.
Their run game's outstanding. It feels very Navy-ish. If they had if they had a better passer, like honestly, I think they'd probably have a better record. I like the way they play. They're very physical. They're very tough. I like their line. Their running backs, they come in waves. Patterson's a monster. Mariota made great decisions against them, I think, which is probably everybody's a little worried this weekend with Daniel Jones because he's even a better trigger man for that zone read stuff. But this was the first, I can't believe it took this long to miss him, but this was the first time that I really felt like they missed Cole Holcomb on the field. And I know he's not coming back anytime soon because of this foot injury, but I would love to see him back for a stretch run and a playoff run.
Yeah. And I will say, I think it was good practice for them this week to face Mariota last week and that zone read, because they've struggled in the past against Jones with the zone read. So that was a good reminder of how you have to play it. And later in the game, I felt like they played it much better, especially down in the goal line where James Smith-Williams attacks the mesh point and then was able to corral Mariota off that. That's where Chase Young would help too. If you get the more athletic ends you have, the more you can defend that play. Justin Check wants to know, why was Erickson returning over Jahan? Make it make sense, Wiseman. All right, so basically from the start of the season, this is the only time I thought that Jahan would have gone out there was when Atlanta was punting from its own end zone, and you'd have a chance for a longer, if it's a line drive, you got a chance for a big return. Otherwise, they weren't going to put him back out there. And I also think because he hasn't done it this year, and I know Erickson hasn't, but that's been his job in the NFL. So he's a sure-handed guy. This is a game. The number one thing those guys want is catch the ball, secure the ball. Anything after that becomes gravy for them. So secure the ball. Jahan hasn't done it in a game. It's a wet day. Why put him out there? So that would be the reason. It hasn't cost him. I know he went to these big runs. I'd look at more at the kickoff returns with Gibson, what he's doing but that's why they want the sure-handed guys back there and then go from there. But I think if it had been, this is my own thought, if it had been better weather, it wouldn't have shocked me if they put Dotson out there in a situational type role where it's like you have a chance for the big return. So I wanted to answer that.
Yep.
All right. So I did, Bram. I did want to go over a couple questions now. If you have more time, let's go over some questions. We got a lot of questions on Twitter, so I make sure we answer the Dotson one from Resh Manuel. Who, in your opinion, has been the most improved offensive and defensive players to date on the Commanders?
Most improved defensive player? Deron Payne has been dominant this year. I would say Allen too, because I think now that Aaron Donald's missing time, I will be surprised if John Allen does not get voted All Pro this year. I think he's been best at his position, and if people are paying enough attention to what's been going on with him, he's had an astronomically great year, and I would hope that he's going to get rewarded that way. But Payne has really stepped up, so much so that I don't see, and I know Rivera already addressed it, but I don't see a path to them to not re-sign him now. How you break up that tandem sounds crazy to me.
Yeah. I think, the reason they kept him and didn't trade him at the deadline or in the offseason is because, or at least before the season, is because they think they're going to keep him. So, listen, I think it'd be silly. Here's the other thing, Bram, with that D line next year, you have, if you're able to keep Payne, you also have Mathis coming back, and you also then have John Ridgeway. They really like John Ridgeway. So do the players. And everything I've heard it from players, I've heard it from coaches. When that guy gets used to playing in this system, it's going to be a big help. And
Commander Dan said St. Juice. I think there's a lot of candidates on defense.
And
Eric Forrest has been outstanding. Right. I think beyond.
Damon Davis can put on that list.
St. Juice was practicing as a slot in the spring, was forced to go to the outside, and go look what Justin Jefferson is doing to literally everybody else. Think about that game now. I know he had good numbers, but think about that game now and the way he played, considering what you've seen from them. Payne's been great. Sweat's gotten better and better and better. The defense on the whole, I think, deserves a lot of credit for the improvement, especially from the young guys. On offense, that's hard. It was nice to see Curtis Samuel back, but I'm not surprised at what he's doing. I would say, Brian Robinson, but I don't know that it's fair to judge him off of the injury that he had. I don't think we really know what shape his body truly is in right now. So I think that's really hard to judge him. Heineke's been outstanding once again when necessary for them. And I actually think his game has grown tremendously. I hope it has not hit a wall, honestly, is what I feel like a little bit when I watch him. He's hit a wall a little bit, and maybe the bye will do him good and get him back and rejuvenated. But I think he's been great. And then McLaurin just keeps getting better and better and better every single year.
Well, here's the one guy that I think has improved from the start of the year. We mentioned him, is Trey Turner. And it's a subtle thing, but he's gotten better. But I don't know, but he was hurt. So is that really an improvement? But that's why he was struggling earlier, but he has played better lately. And I think Robinson clearly has improved, but he had no choice because he was hurt or he was shot, and then he had to recover from that, and you have to get used to it. So to say it's that he's vastly improved, well, he's steadily improving, but I think it's easier on defense, and there's a bunch of them on defense. here's another one, Bram, from Reginald Skinner. When can Ron Rivera get in the Coach of the Year talks? All the drama in and outside of football and winning games.
That's a good question. That's the first I've heard his name pop up, and I think he deserves consideration. So I hope he gets consideration for it. He's been asked to do more than any head coach in the league by far, not close. So and he's kept this thing together. And the 6-1 run started Thursday night in Chicago, and that morning the ESPN report came out. So just think about that for a second. Like, the thing that should have blown up their season ended up somehow galvanizing a locker room. I think there's a lot. I don't think it's as simple as defining it that way, but you want to talk about somebody closing the ranks, closing the doors, shutting out the noise, keeping a team beyond competitive. I think if they end up with 10 wins, I think he'll get consideration. The problem is he's going to have 10 wins and third place in his division, and it's going to be hard for him to make the case when Sirianni's 14-3 or, whatever their record ends up being. It's not often you get like a third place team gets Coach of the Year. But I appreciate that someone thinks he should be in consideration.
He should absolutely be, because very few have had to deal with what he has to deal with here. I think one of the strengths, and I brought this up with Nikki and I talked about this after the game, but one of his strengths has been the consistency. And it's funny because I tweeted this out the other day, but early in the year, you hear from people like, he's got to show more emotion on the sidelines. He's got to do this. The key to one of the things that he does very well for them is he stays calm amid the chaos. They appreciate that. And I can tell you, like, I have players will say sometimes, I had a player tell me one time, like, dude, you should listen to our meetings. Like, he's awesome in there. Like, and these guys really appreciate how he's been with them. So, like, again, in the chaotic situation, he's handled it well. And that's part of the reason why they're winning. So here's another one, Bram. Redundancy wants to know. I'm going to answer that. I'm going to take this one real quick. How much better can Brian Robinson get? What do you think his ceiling is? Ramping it up since the injury, getting better every week. One of the things I really liked last week, there's a couple things. First of all, the receivers and tight ends I thought blocked really well the other day. When you start getting that, it allows guys like Robinson and Gibson to then get more yards down the field. One of the things that that was noticeable last week is the confidence that he has with knowing where he needs to be, where the defense may have some holes, et cetera. So the way his ability to press the hole and bounce outside, his ability to get outside and with some motor was a difference. So I think the other thing is reading that second level. Before, his goal was get to the second level. Now his goal is read the second level and get beyond. And you saw that the other day. You could see him reading the linebackers, where they were in relation to the hole and when he pressed it and getting outside there. So I think you can start to see more of that and the consistency with it. I think as much as anything, he's still, like, when you talk to them over there, they still don't think he's for what he's going to be, and so I think there's still definitely room, but I think we saw a big foreshadowing the other day of what he could be. Now, can you do that every week? It's kind of hard to run for a $105 every week, but that, I think it's the style of what he showed is what they think he can be consistent with.
I'm surprised. The one thing that surprised me, but I learned it in camp, he's a natural pass catcher too. I don't know how much they're going to use him that way, but he is. You saw him in space in the touchdown. We'll see guys truck people like that very often either. It was by far his best game as a pro. And again, like, I don't really know how truly healthy he is. Only he and the team really knows that.
Said they still say he's not where they think he's going to be.
Yeah, but he was outstanding last week. He really was.
So, and then a couple more, and it's a deep cut. And we already talked about Jahan, but I do want to answer this. Was the Jahan pick a waste since they rarely throw to him?
No,
because the guy's going to be really good. I mean, like, I can't emphasize how much I enjoy watching him run routes and watching him get open. And I see it every game when the guy gets open. Now, where there's a play or two where he makes a move here, makes a move there. They do need to get him the ball more. I think the evolution of this offense has got to be in the pass game, and that's when he's going to become a bigger factor. So, no, I don't think it was a wasted pick.
No. Like, when this thing is fully operational and the three of those receivers are seeing, week to week kind of a rotated group of targets, watch out. Watch out.
So we got maybe two more here, Bram. Jeff Weinberger wants to know, has a reporter really gotten into what Coach Rivera and his staff think of Sam Howell? I don't mean just an answer of he is a work in progress. Does he really have a shot at the QB job come next season? Well, I have not.
A serious question. Yeah, dude, but you can answer this, but I just want to start with this. Why does everyone care so much right now?
I don't know. This is why I wanted to bring it up. I don't know. I don't
understand. Like, they're 7-5. They're winning with this quarterback. We know who their backup is when he's healthy and ready to go. It's the guy they spent $28 million a year on. Like, who cares about next year? Can we stop talking about next year? This year is very much alive. If they were 4-8, I would hear you out on this. But like at 7-5 and having won 6 of their last 7 games, I really don't care who the quarterback is next year at this point.
Well, and the reason why I'm bringing it up is for that. And number two is, first of all, I know they liked him before the draft, period. I know that if they had not traded for Wentz, they would have drafted Sam Howell higher than what they did, and it would have been a competition. They probably would have brought another veteran in, but they liked him enough where he would have gone higher than the 5th round for them. So I know that. I also know he has a long way to go. And like Bram, I mean, I think what people want is, as much as the winning, is get that guy for the future. But shoot, look around this league, like how many guys are changed all the time. Like, what I think you should be excited about is this is a defense that could be really good for a while. I mean, this is a young defense. So, and I know the next step is getting that quarterback or getting a consistent offense. And, I think there's just so much to go before we get to the point where is he in that competition? I would not put him there now. No.
Call me in the spring. Like, who cares right now? I'm trying to enjoy this. They're 7-5. There's a humongous game this weekend.
Right.
Like, who cares about next year?
Yes. So, all right. So we'll end on this one. Commander Ant wants to know, over the last 7 games, how do you view this team? They beat Philly, went toe-to-toe with Minnie. Do you think their style of play is sustainable in the playoffs if they make the playoffs?
Yeah. Defense and a run game travel. Right now they'd play Minnesota. You're not confident they can't win that game? I am. So, they're probably right now 2 teams that I would have a hard time buying them win a playoff game against, especially because they'd be on the road, and that's the 49ers and the Eagles. But things can change, and the 49ers go through bouts where they don't score a lot of points. So who knows? Outside of that, like, I like their chances. And that's why I said, like, let's stay focused here on the here and now. Like, they have a dominant defensive line. Nobody has more tackles for losses than this group does. They're having the threesome of Sweat, Allen, Payne are having maybe, and I'd have to get like a historian to look at it. They might be having the best season any trio along a Washington defensive line has ever had. Like, and the metrics may show that. Like, they're ridiculously great this year. And I don't want to take anything away from Tuhill and Smith Williams, these other guys who have been clearly big time contributors too, but those 3 have been outrageous. It's cartoonish how good they've been, how many plays they blow up every single week. I mean, there was one, Patterson had some big run last week that John Allen missed a tackle on. He was standing 3 yards in the backfield. Like, it was crazy, like how many times they nearly look like they're going to blow up a play. So yeah, of course this travels. If they're going to run the ball like this, stick to it, not turn the ball over very much, and play defense like this and come through in critical moments, why can't they win, in January? I don't see why not.
The other thing to factor in there, the special teams have been pretty good. And that's, Tressway has been really good. And he is a weapon. He is a weapon for this defense, man. And that's, you can't underestimate that. The turnover margin, they're tops in the turnover margin during this stretch in the NFL. They're deep and runs and points in during this stretch. I mean, they are doing so. Yes, and then it becomes in the playoffs. First of all, I don't want to get like Jim Zorn and start talking about playoffs like weeks and weeks before they're ready. They were 6-3 under Jim Zorn, and he started talking about resting guys for the playoffs. Like, you're crazy. And of course they didn't make it.
They still have to win. They got to win 3 more games to safely get in.
Yes.
And the schedule reads Dallas, New York, San Francisco, and Cleveland. And only one of those teams is like legitimately not going to make the playoffs. And oh, by the way, we don't know if Cleveland is going to be a completely different team with that quarterback back.
Right. So one thing they don't do, Bram, they don't stop the run either.
Yeah.
The Browns do not stop the run. My son has told me that every week. So,
but like last time I saw that guy play, he was a top 5 quarterback. So, let's see.
Yeah. We'll see. And then Todd Labor wants to know, is Heineke kind of like Joe Theismann in a way? What do you think?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, yeah, he reminds me of that a little bit. Very different personality.
Slightly.
Like, very different personality. But because like, no offense to Joe, but like the guys who did the 5 o'clock club, I don't think they invited him in the shed. But I think the guys, if they had a modern 5 o'clock club, he'd probably be the ringleader of it.
I think he would be the cat. I think he'd definitely be
there. Joe, like, no offense to Heineke, Joe was a better athlete. So, with a bigger arm and maybe a little faster legs, and he knew it too. He knew it.
He did. And I think the other thing, I think Joe's probably more athletic, probably a better arm, but I think the leadership style, Joe was a good leader. Those players, like when you talk to those guys, they loved his toughness. Jay Kurt, any word on Benjamin St. Juste? Nothing yet. He was walking around okay last week. So I'm curious to see. We'll know more tomorrow. And I apologize for not having a better answer. We'll know more on Wednesday if he's able to practice or not. And so pay attention to Twitter, ESPN.com. I have another podcast Thursday morning where I'll address it. So pay attention to all that stuff. But yeah, so there you go. And then I think one more here. All right, clapping big dirty.
Don't read that.
No, I can't do that.
Read that.
I didn't know what that was.
You're dying for you to read that, John. Come on.
Yeah. All right. I didn't know. I just saw one. So here we go. Anyways, Bram, that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, I'm like pumped for the stretch run here. I can't believe these 2 games against the Giants have this much meaning attached to them. You could never have convinced me of that in the summer. So
here's what's cool is how, like, if you're an old time football guy the NFC East being this good is awesome. And to have big games in the NFC East, look at the games that are coming up in the NFC East over the last month. And it's awesome. And if you're a football fan, I know everybody here is going to like it because it's Washington, but if you're a football fan, this is like the NFL is better when the NFC East is like this.
There's only one time that the Cowboys, Eagles, and Redskins were in the playoffs together at the same time, 1992. There's a distinct, if Washington wins this weekend or somehow sweeps the Giants, there's a distinct possibility that will happen again. And that's unbelievable. And frankly, if Washington's playing Minnesota in the first round, the Eagles would have a bye, the way it projects out. Dallas really against anybody, honestly, especially like, I don't care who it is, like what, you're not going to favor them even on the road as a wild card. You are against either one of the other division winners. Like, frankly, like this would be it'd be unbelievable if in the divisional round there were 3 NFC East teams there. Like that would be crazy. And it's really not that it's very feasible right now as we stand that could happen. Like it's really crazy.
Yeah. It's great that the NFC East is back like this again. It makes our jobs more interesting. It makes the NFL more fun. And that's what we like. So anyways, folks, that's it from us. Thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget, I'll be back on Thursday with ESPN Giants reporter Jordan Ronan. Get the inside scoop on the Giants. Get ready for this weekend. Keys and predictions on Friday and Saturday. Get ready for the game, and I will talk to you next time.